Hi there, I'm Ben Pearson. Welcome to the Tech World Human Skills Podcast. Every episode we talk through how to thrive in the tech world, not just survive. Now, if you want me to work with your team, just give me a shout. I love to help teams be more influential, memorable and successful with their stakeholders. Head over to www.techworldhumanskills.com to book a chat. Hi everybody and welcome to the Tech World Human Skills Podcast. It is lovely to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining us. And we are recording the third really of a little mini-series about leadership, leading in tech. And in episode 1, we sort of talked a little bit about how you show up as a leader. In episode 2 of this, we talked about change theory and how you drive change. And in this episode, we are talking all about results and how you multiply and achieve greater results through people. So that's what we're going to be talking about. And our guest today is a definite friend of the show. He's done a number of episodes with us now, and they've all been brilliant. So please, can you welcome to the podcast, Ben Caird. Ben, it's lovely to have you with us.
Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me back.
Well, no, the pleasure is all mine. Now, for people that maybe haven't caught any of the earlier episodes, could you just introduce yourself a little bit?
I certainly can. 25 years of working in software and technology, 15 plus years now leading people. Big enterprise customers, big software, SaaS, all that good stuff, but really kind of building large operational teams and driving improvement and transformation.
Yeah. And so we've worked together for, we haven't actually worked together for many years, but many years ago we did work together a good number of years. We led a team together, and then we've done a number of episodes together. So the episodes, the last two that I think were particularly relevant, to this, and I'd encourage, if you haven't listened to those, to go back and listen to those. First one was thinking about how you show up as a leader.
Yes.
And we talked a little bit about that. Second one was then a bit about change theory.
Yes.
What we said in both of those was, although some of those maybe sounded a little bit soft and fluffy, actually that was how you achieve results. Achieving results is really important, and the soft and fluffy helps.
Yes, we did. Yeah, we did.
Do you want to expand on that a little bit?
I think we really wanted to call that out because it can be a bit soft, like servant leadership. Depending on who hears that term, it's we'll create an environment, but is there any discipline? Are there any results, or is it all just we all having a nice time to no real end? So I think we touched on that. And I think a lot of what we talked about was, yes, it's the environment, but it is about creating trust, but also about accountability and then having that real clarity around what success is. And we'll come on to that, I guess, in this one in terms of driving those ultimate results. Yeah. And as you said, with and through people. Yeah. Which is key.
And I think so. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to focus on achieving results through people, because you can achieve greater results as a group than you can as an individual.
Yes.
So the three sort of areas that we're going to focus and dig into a little bit today, little bit on giving the right things to the right people.
Yep.
Little bit on giving feedback to people, and a little bit on oversight, governance, that kind of stuff, whatever term you want to use. So that's where we're going to go over the next half an hour or so. Should we start off with the first point? Giving the right things to the right people. What does that mean to you?
I think about I interview in this way, but I also lead teams in this way, in that I think about aptitude. So I try and get to know people to know how are they wired and what would they be good at.
Okay.
And then I'm also looking at, have they done it before? So have I got confidence that they can get there, maybe with a bit less coaching or a bit less oversight, So that's really how I think about it. And then it depends what you're trying to get done. So is it, I need to get there quickly, or it's high risk, or those types of things. And I might want people that have done it a bit before.
Yeah.
Or maybe I've got a bit more room and I can give it to somebody who's like high potential, really good wiring, might need a little bit more course correcting. So that's kind of how I think about trying to line up. Can they do it is the first question, and then how much help might they need in order to do it, and how does that work with what I need to achieve and when?
Yeah, and so it's interesting, as you're going into that, it sounds a little bit like situational leadership, which is a training course I went on many, many years ago. Did you go on that training course?
I did, for the same company. I suspect.
Okay.
Yes.
But, and that sort of talks about this idea of thinking about, they call it competence, I guess, like functional competence. I forget maybe the exact terminology, but are they really good at doing something, or do they, they don't have the functional competence? So you've got a scale there, and then the other scale is their energy levels and their commitment and their enthusiasm. So the idea being, the obvious, the cliches that come up, of course, being you've got perhaps the early in career, super enthusiastic, but doesn't yet have the skills and the competence, but is on a great path to build those. Or maybe in tech, we've seen the functional cynic who's really knows the job really well, but has lost the will to live and is a bit of an energy sucker rather than an energy giver, but actually knows a lot about how to do the role. There may be two extremes. Yeah. But then the other one that you're putting in is you're talking about aptitude and potential in there as well.
Yes.
How does that sort of map in?
Yeah, so it is the potential, isn't it? I'll give you one example.
Okay.
Maybe two if you push me. So I've actually in a couple of different settings, I've needed somebody to help me build out a really good data model so that I could understand in a more objective way what's going on, use that data to make good decisions, and also to kind of measure that we're driving the right results, right?
Yeah.
Data is done well, really important. I didn't necessarily have an ops analyst that I could bring to bear, but in both of these scenarios, two different people, two different companies, I could see that they were so Insights Blue, very data oriented, very good, just thought really well. One of them was actually a people manager, so had a really good side there as well. So could not just think about data, but then how would you actually use that in a manager role to drive things, for example?
Yeah.
And then in the other scenario, this person had really good sort of SQL knowledge, understood how to build data models, and actually it turned out had much better ideas around how to visualize data than I did. I did a sort of a whiteboard, really rough diagram, sent a photo, and she's like, yeah, you haven't thought about that, and by the way, here you go.
Yeah.
So, but in both of those examples, they were not ops analysts. They weren't as experienced as other ops analysts that you could bring in, but actually they had really good thinking, and they had a load of other things that they could bring in as well.
Yeah.
And so
the potential, the aptitude was there.
The aptitude was really strong.
Yeah.
And actually some of the other proven capability helped them be even better at this particular.
So it was about you having faith that even though they didn't have the proven competence yet, that they were going to get there. That they were given a bit of time.
Yeah.
They were going to get there.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. So, So the question then comes to me is, well, why wouldn't you just want everybody in your team to be high competence, high energy?
Carnage.
Right.
Well, I think
or high commitment, high energy, high enthusiasm.
Yeah, I think you have to be a bit careful with balancing teams, I would say. So I think you want everybody to be committed.
Yeah.
I think energy is different with different people.
Yeah.
You do have people that are quite laid back and considered, but that you shouldn't always confuse. Some people might think that isn't hard working. That absolutely can be.
Yeah.
And that can be there's lots of people I've worked with who I can see are very reflective.
Yeah.
So I will ask them to come back to me rather than put them on the spot.
Yeah.
Right. Because I get a better result then.
Yeah.
So I think you do need to balance a team. And if you had high energy, highly competitive, and everyone was fairly similar in that regard, it doesn't always create that balanced team. And we've done insights in the past. I often think about that. You need a bit of the red, the yellow, the green, and the blue, and how you balance that.
So. And also, just in terms of commitment or energy levels, and I guess when I'm thinking about energy there, what I'm thinking about is not, are you an enthusiastic person, but are you committed and energized by your mission and trying to work hard, as it were?
Okay. Yeah.
You go through that in different cycles. So, for example, and I can only speak for my when I just had kids, probably wasn't quite as committed. Well, not probably, wasn't as committed to delivering at work as I was maybe a year or two before, where I didn't have other things competing for my headspace and that kind of stuff. So perhaps my commitment and energy levels were a bit lower. But then, as maybe the kids got a bit older and the novelty of children wore off.
Good.
You get a little bit.
This is being recorded. Yeah.
Then you get a bit committed. So it's not like everybody's on this constant energy and commitment level. Yeah, and everybody's varying.
And we probably covered elements of this in one of the other two. But there is that getting to know your people and understanding what's going on in their world and balancing that, isn't it? It's like we're 3-dimensional, aren't we? And I'm sure there's some sort of metaphor about an iceberg here, right? But there's a lot that's going on, and you need to understand that. Yeah. But somebody that's doing a great job is still doing a great job, even if it's 80% of what they can give at a point in time. Yeah.
So choosing the right people to do the right thing, bearing those sorts of things in mind, how much oversight, we're going to get to that later, but how much help and oversight people might need, how much space people might need.
Yeah, I guess the aptitude, like what we talked about before, the people I was talking about there could probably afford a bit more time and energy to kind of cut their teeth on this new opportunity and learn how to be a seasoned ops analyst. Yeah. Whereas you just had your kids, you could have been an ops analyst and lived in your comfort zone for a year or two, or closer into your comfort zone. So I think that's life, isn't it? Sometimes you want to push on, sometimes you need to sort of stay where you are.
Consolidate in some aspects of your life.
You still learn a lot there, but it's not the same trajectory. Yeah. That's okay.
So I think it's probably worth just thinking, if people are more interested in that, I would definitely recommend having a look at that situational leadership. Yes. It's definitely up there on Wikipedia. If you do some searching, you can find it. It's not the perfect model. There's always things that are good and bad about a model, but it's a useful way to hook your thinking into.
Yeah, unconsciously competent, isn't it? I think, which is like, don't think about changing gear, do you? Once you've learnt to drive, it's that. That's the model, isn't it? Right?
I don't remember that.
I think that's it. So the model is very simplistically, you have to really concentrate on changing gear when you first learn to drive, don't you? Yeah. And then fast forward 2 years and you don't know how you drove from one town to another, and that's that. You become subconsciously
competent.
Competent and able to do it.
Yeah, I'd forgotten that bit. Yeah, now you say it. All right.
There you go.
Right. Well, let's move on. So we've thought there about giving the right things to the right people.
Yes.
And that's a great thing to do to achieve results through others. Let's talk a little bit about having to give feedback. Now, I know I've done a whole episode with Nicola Slater on this, but it's such, and I'd encourage people to go back and have a look at that, but I think it's worth touching on because leaders are often not great at giving feedback. So maybe we've given things to people and either people aren't delivering them as effectively or their competence is lower, so they need to be given feedback so that they can get better and can become more competent. But often we're not very good at giving feedback. I don't know. Have you got any experiences
of not being very good at giving feedback? Loads. Yeah, I mean, I'd probably bow to you've probably got some good models and a bit more expertise there. I think giving feedback's important. You don't always have to sit somebody down and say, I'm going to give you some feedback, because that tends to lead to
defenses going up.
There's ways of giving feedback, but when I coach, I'll give you two things I have in my head when I'm coaching people, and often this is, I've been in leader roles, so I'm thinking more about those scenarios. I think about do I need to build confidence or do I need to build awareness? So is somebody not aware of the impact they're having and maybe they need some awareness, some help around that? Because most people are good, and if they have that awareness, they can probably do something about it. It's normally they're not quite aware of how they show up or the impact it has or whatever that might be. And then sometimes we talked about high potential earlier, you've got really high potential people, and actually it's less about giving them tiny little bits of veneer feedback. It's more about using your network, getting them opportunities and running. I always think about running ahead in a corridor and opening doors so they can go even quicker, right? It's that side. So I think feedback's really important. The feedback is really on that awareness bit, and then it is just about trying to be quite specific. I think we touched on this, but if you're in a good position where you've built trust and you've got a good relationship, I think that feedback, it's much easier to be quite direct on that. And I'm sure you've got some good models around how to think about that. But you try and give feedback, and then I've had some scenarios where I've had to just go very, very direct because it's just not landing. It's not landing, and it's that real. Sometimes you need to kind of give it to somebody between the eyes, and they need to go away for the weekend or whatever it is and reflect on it. And you're trying to kind of go, look, got your back here, but you really need to hear this. Yeah. That's not often that I've had to do that, but I think that can be quite impactful.
Yeah. I think, so you're right, a couple of models, and so my experiences had to give a lot as a leader. So when you're leading teams, and the way I kind of think of it is feedback really is rocket fuel for performance, right? How do you get better at something? Somebody tells you that's an expert saying you're not doing. And if you think about becoming a musician, that's something people go for music lessons to get that. Or if you're becoming a chef, people, or a coach. Even if you think about the best sports people, like I don't know, Djokovic in tennis, or they have coaches, right? Even though they're the best at football or the best at tennis, that's somebody to help them.
Yeah, they do, and that's the if I take you back to my two things around raising awareness, and building confidence. Actually, with Djokovic, let's pick Djokovic. Yeah, he'll have had lots of very directive coaching around this is how you throw a ball and hit a ball and serve and do those things early in career. Yeah. Later in the career, have you noticed that when you hit that ball out on that first serve, that your elbow's in this position? Like it's not. Nobody's telling him how to serve anymore, but they are raising his awareness so that he can work out in his style, his way, how to do the thing. And there's, I think sport's quite interesting in that regard, particularly elite sport, because there are some quite key parallels there.
And yet, so you've got these elite people that are paying other people to help them do that.
Yes.
And yet somehow there's something else, like you said, somebody says, I want to give you some feedback, your hackles go, your hackles go. So I think first thing is to go that feedback is rocket fuel for your performance. So as somebody that wants to get better at stuff, always being open to feedback. That's not always saying that you have to act on everybody's opinion, but to be open to feedback, I think is a really important thing. There's some things to think about that I've seen that people don't do very well. So the first thing I would always say is talk about behaviours rather than judgments, ascribing judgments to things. Yeah. So if we go back to your Djokovic example, and I'm making this up now, so it could all go a bit wrong, but you were very specific. Have you noticed that your elbow is slightly out to the right that's very behavioural. Whereas if somebody come up and went, you're rubbish at serving, right? Or you're average at serving, that doesn't help, because being average at serving isn't something that you can fix. Whereas having your elbow out is something that you can work on and something that you can change. And the shame, like if you've got somebody in your team that always shows up to meetings and is always on the phone, all the time, saying stuff like, you're not interested, you're never listening to me, is perhaps a judgment, whereas saying, oh, I've just noticed that you're using your phone quite in the meeting, quite a bit in the meeting.
Are you okay?
Are you okay? And so, the first thing I'd say is think always about behaviours.
But turn that around, just to be really specific. Lead with, are you okay?
Yeah.
And then go to, because if they go, what do you mean? Sometimes you don't even need to give that feedback, because are you okay? I'm sure we've all had it. can lead to, an outburst of emotion and all.
No, I'm not.
What's really going on?
Yeah, these are things, and you're exactly right. And I'm glad you said that, because in the episode, the full episode I did on this with Nicola, she talked about the accountability dial. And you start off light and curious. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine. You're right. But then if it's the same in the next meeting and there isn't, an emergency going on, I noticed, several times in meetings now you're on your phone, and then you can get right to the end where now you've just got somebody that's just never listening, never engaging in a meeting. You need to be direct. You need to be listening in this meeting. This is part of your job. So you sort of dial up from the "Are you okay?" through to "I'm being very directive."
Yeah.
In quite a in a
because it's rare, but occasionally people will push the limits of what's acceptable, and you don't just softly forever.
Yeah,
there needs to be
at some point an awareness going from
and
curiosity.
a behavioural change one way or another. Right?
Yeah, and so that's the other bit. Then I would say is it's timely. There's nothing worse than getting to somebody's end of year review and say, 9 months ago. You did this thing.
Tuesday. Yeah.
So getting there quick. And actually, if you get there quick and exercise curiosity, that is, the winner.
Yeah.
The winner.
And the flip side to this, just to put a slight counter on it as well, is if you're new into perhaps giving feedback or leading people, don't feel you have to give feedback always. Because I think sometimes people will give feedback to feel like they've ticked the box of giving feedback in a one-to-one.
Yeah.
And it's not always required. Do it if it makes
needed
sense and if it's needed, but don't feel the need to. Yeah. And also don't give feedback to I think you touched on this a bit, but it's not about my style. It's about how, the outcome. We talked about this before, delegate outcomes, not activities.
Yeah.
But coach around the elbow.
Amplifying their style, not making them like you.
You don't need to tell Djokovic how to fix the thing, because most of his coaches are never going to be as good as him, are they? But they can at least raise his awareness and then ask him how he wants to go about.
Yeah.
Do you even want to fix it? And what does that look like?
Yeah.
Early in career people or trying something new, maybe they need more specific feedback around the technique and the detail.
Yeah. Yeah. And a nice little framework that I got given years ago by somebody that worked at the BBC was the WIT feedback, the WIT framework. So he had to give feedback to journalists that were on the other, in front of the camera. Perhaps some big egos, that sort of thing going on. And so I remember him coaching on the WIT framework. So it was when, impact, therefore. So if we do this with the Djokovic example, when you served, your elbow's going out too far. So what's the impact of that? The impact, let's make this up because I'm not a tennis aficionado, is that you're reducing the power that's going through the ball, right? So so therefore, should we look at ways that we can bring the elbow in that means we'll amplify the amount of power that we can use? So that's quite an unemotional way of saying this was the issue. When your elbow goes out, the impact is we're not getting as much power through the ball. Therefore, let's look at techniques to change where your elbow is in the serve. Nice. And so you can put that in the setting of tech, or you can put that in the setting of being a team leader or whatever. Really nice little framework. And I've used that personally loads and found it really useful way to give feedback.
Yep. Who knew that Djokovic would show up so often? It's almost like we're getting paid per mention.
We're not sponsored by anyone. I don't even know if he's sponsored by these days. Lacoste, I'm sure he's Lacoste.
Yeah, must be.
Going for Lacoste sponsorship. Right. So feedback, I think that's a really useful topic to think about. The other thing I'd say on it, and maybe we can talk about this. So let's say we've got to the point where we've exercised curiosity and actually we're saying somebody needs to change the way they're doing something in order to be more effective. Mm-hmm. This balance of empathy and honesty.
Yep.
So if you think about being honest, right? Honest is saying this is the thing you need to change to get better.
Yep.
But there's ways that you can go about it that perhaps put people's backs up or perhaps do more harm than good. How do you think about getting the balance of empathy and kindness versus honesty?
Still working on it. I think it's really difficult, but I also think ideally you've got some trust or you've got something with somebody, but not always. And so I think it's an ongoing thing as well, and you can course correct. I think sometimes we think about this as like one interaction that's got to be perfect. Well, actually, you can recover and you can check in with people, can't you? And you can virtually put your arm around them. So I'm certain I don't. You'd have to speak to people I've worked with over the years. I think that I listen and I care, and people feel that. Hopefully, that's just authentic. I mean, it's difficult, but I genuinely think people want to do good stuff, and I genuinely come into most interactions with, how can I help? Need to understand a bit about you, a bit where you're coming from. Are you in the right job? Is this the right bit of work for you to be doing? And even if it's not, if that's what you're paid to do, we might need to help you get there, even if the longer term play is to do a different role, ideally in the same company or whatever it might be. So I think it's always that if you come at it from, I've always thought about you're looking after the business, you're looking after the team, and you're looking after the individual. And if you can balance those three, it's a great win.
Yeah.
And so I think if you come into that, though, if you do those three, I think hopefully you can balance those two things you're talking about, really.
Yeah.
As long as you're doing the seek to understand, the empathy, but ultimately, something needs to give, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Is why you're in that conversation.
And I think it's about that balance, right? If we're all honesty, you're going to put people's backs up because you're not caring. You're not coming from people's meeting people where they are. But if you're all empathy and you're never actually honest, it's all unicorns and sparkles and nothing ever gets better.
Yeah, I've got I'm very positive generally, and I have to dial that down because it can be annoying. You can ask my wife. But B, if you're too positive, it's not credible either, depending on the scenario, right? So to your point, it is a balance. I don't think I get it right all the time. I don't reckon most of the time I don't go too far.
Yeah.
And so it is that. I always think almost all relationships are course correctable. And as long as you don't go too far in one direction, there is that, and you can always finish these tough conversations with, look, give you a bit of time to think about that. Please know I've got your best interests, and I'll put some time in, and we'll check in on where you're up to and how you're thinking about it. Do you know what I mean? So you can have the impact. Sometimes you really need the person to hear the bad thing because you need them to go away and reflect on it. I say the bad thing, but the crunching feedback or whatever it might be. But I still think you can. Often they're not always listening so much after that, but you can at least say. And then you can follow up, as we talked about, really keen to just check in with again and at least have that, have that across to them so they know they've got another check-in point.
And the other thing is we always talk about feedback, and this is where feedback can be a bad word, and maybe perspective sometimes is a better word, is you always think of it as about being that crunching, and we forget to give positive, affirmation. You're doing that thing really well.
Yeah.
Keep doing that thing really well, building confidence and reinforcing the things that people do well, as opposed to picking a hole in the little thing that they can get better. So it's not forgetting to think about positive perspective and positive feedback as well.
Yes, I agree. I and probably should listen to that advice sometimes. I think I'm very much an optimizer, be it of a system or a team or whatever it might be. So I'm always looking for what we can do better. Again, you can put systems and things in place to make yourself go, actually, I'm going to spend some time and go and thank some people and do that. And the other bit that's probably not talked about, but certainly as a parent, I think about it a lot, is role modelling as well with all these things, isn't it? Yeah. Be the behaviour you want to see.
Yeah.
Don't always get that right. But I think that's a key part of all of this is, if you're giving feedback, you best be living and breathing it yourself,
For some reason, Michael Jackson's just come into my brain with Dancing with the Man in the Mirror. I don't know if you know that song. Remember that when I'm dancing with Be the Change? Something about, anyway.
Make that change. I believe.
Right, let's move on. We're running out of time. So the final thing, because we've looked at, get the right people in the right place.
And then get them optimised in that place.
And then if things are going well, tell them about it. And when things aren't, these are some techniques on how we can give feedback so that we can raise their competence so that they're more effective in role.
Confidence.
And confidence.
Yeah.
Let's think about oversight, governance, phrases like that. I'll give you an easy question. What's it like? Talk to me about when there is no oversight, and talk to me about when there is too much oversight.
Chaos and strangulation.
Okay.
I would say.
Okay. Well, let's start on chaos.
Would you like me to expand on
that? Let's expand on that.
Well, with so these words, sometimes people hear, the G word, governance. People don't, I think it can be a bit, it doesn't have to be, it's the difference between, so at the extreme end, bureaucracy and discipline, which is the good version, right? So I think that was good to great, wasn't it? Ideally, you want discipline, not bureaucracy. So having been in environments at both ends of that spectrum, generally speaking, not always a popular phrase, you get what you inspect, but very, very true. So you do need checks and balances, and you do need to make sure that you're all broadly pointing in the right direction and pulling in the same way, right? And so governance can be, if I think about recent, the last few groups that I've led, for the business as usual, if you like, for the running the business and making sure everything goes well, I would have monthly operational reviews where we would check the numbers. But generally, the leaders would come in and they'd bring it to life and they'd talk about their people.
Yeah.
But, we'd use data and we would understand what went well, what were the challenges, and then what are the 3 things we're going to do this month. And then through having some data and some oversight and some conversation to bring it to life, we could make sure that if we did a thing, did it work? Are we going to carry on doing that thing, or are we going to change tact? And that having that oversight just allows people to course correct.
Yeah.
It also allows people to hear what each other are doing. One of the best things from a monthly operational review, which might fill people with not joy, dread perhaps, in terms of I've got to come in and talk about what my team's doing. We actually saw people going, that is brilliant. Like, can I get 10 minutes with you after this and just go through how you're doing that? And so sharing of best practices, and you can build a real virtuous way. So I think that's, if you like, oversight and governance in that regard. And then I'll give you a different example with, I guess AI might be relatively topical. We were rolling out some technology, and we wanted to make sure that we iterated really quickly and we improved the customer experience almost in the day. We would have a weekly cadence. We'd have the right people plugged in. And there, by the way, there would be much more going on a daily basis where people would be talking. But we'd have a weekly check-in where we'd kind of understand blockers, things, what we needed to accelerate, what side conversations needed to happen. And that was a way of, sometimes you need to iterate really, really quickly and you need a much shorter period of time. But what you don't necessarily want is 1 million people in a meeting daily, because that takes you away from doing the actual thing.
Yeah.
So I sort of think about the transformation, build the future stuff, and then the run the business stuff as 2 separate things. But I have oversight on both. Does that make sense?
It does. And, a few things are sort of springing out as you say that. There's the importance of data, which is really important to measure it. You then start to say, but you get what you inspect, because people manage the metrics. So you can lead to this watermelon scorecards, which looks green. You chop it open and it's red inside because So the other bit that you kind of looked at, you said there, was it's about the stories. It's about the best practice. It's about the substance beneath that brings it to life. That means this isn't somebody managing a metric that's behaving badly, but somebody that is behaving well, and the data reflects that.
Exactly. So the chaos that we talked about with no governance was something would go red and then somebody would act on it, but the next day it would just be something else. It's kind of like what I call whack-a-mole KPIs. It's exactly that. The method I'm talking about really is much more, to your point, watermelon scorecard. You see it everywhere. Lots of it. It looks all right. It looks good. We closed it quickly, or we did this, or we did that. But actually, when you look underneath it, there's multiple things coming in. It keeps repeating. We close them quickly, but we aren't actually fixing the problem. So it looks good in a stat, but when you look more holistically, it's just bouncing up again. So to your point, the reason that monthly works is because you're focusing on a couple of big things and trying to have an impact, rather than doing something daily, which is really just reacting, transactional, I would call it, rather than. So in a support context, you're trying to be proactive and you're actually trying to stop any problems happening in the first place, versus I just need to get the widgets through quickly and I'll just whack it down and come in tomorrow and do the same thing. That's your chaos versus your calm factory floor, which is what you're aiming for.
And I'm going to then take that to the other end, to the micromanage. So I remember running a team of solution architects when you're behind revenue target, right? So we're there trying to sell stuff and you're behind revenue targets. And so that level of inspection, and we call it, weighing the pig, it doesn't matter how many different ways you weigh the pig still weighs the same. And so senior leaders would be sort of saying, right, we want, look at it like this way, look at it this way, and you're like, I'm spending so much time getting this data for you that you're not hearing the story, you're not hearing the reality, and we keep weighing the pig and we're all spending cycles weighing, and actually what we just need to do is go, we haven't got enough in the pipeline, and now these are the reasons why. Now we need to crack on and stop trying to weigh it and start. So that's
the negative, isn't it, of data, and it's analysis paralysis. The problem I massively generalise. The problem there is you needed more in the pipe up over here, and until you do that, and often, and I'm no sales expert, but that's the other challenge. You can bring deals forward, but then ultimately you're creating a problem down the line unless you fundamentally fix the underlying thing, right? So it's I think some of that comes with experience, right, and being able to step right back and then look at the system. But I think that's the
And it's interesting. It's about balance again, isn't it? So often we come back to this sort of idea of it's about balance, right? You need enough oversight so that you can deliver results, because this is about delivering results. And if you've got no oversight or no governance, you don't know whether you will. It's luck whether or not you, because you create a great environment. But if you're heading in slightly the wrong direction and you never measure anything, then that's bad. But if you come down to just all we ever do is weigh the pig, and all we ever do, and you've got micromanagers that are just constantly giving you no freedom. Nobody wants to work in that environment.
Yeah, like I suppose it's not adding much to what you've said really, but I've seen I create these great environments where people thrive. Okay, can you tell me about X? And they know nothing about their business and don't know, how key customers are doing or whatever it might be, nothing at all. And then the other end of the spectrum, like you say, is micromanaging within their style. And I've seen that quite a lot where it's just, you tend to see high turnover as well, don't you? Because people
of staff.
High turnover of staff, because people just like, I need a little bit of freedom to be me to get results that way. So it's somewhere in the middle. Life and work, it turns out, is all about balance.
Well, on that bombshell, I reckon that's a good sort of place to wrap up. So maybe just reflect key takeaways. What would be your key takeaways from what we've talked about today?
Good question. I think in systems and structures and things, but I think you need to have the right people in the right spots.
Yeah.
You need to delegate the right things to the right people, and then you need to spend the time to understand how it's going and to be able to help those people do their best work. And then stay close enough that you can create. It's a virtuous cycle, right? It's not like a once and done, is it? And so I think it's a blend of right people in the right places, right work to the right people, and then staying close and just in a really positive way, so that everyone can do their best work. And I think we talked a bit about that positivity. It's also about celebrating the successes individually and as a team, which then just really helps the virtuous cycle go faster.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. Right people, right place. That's brilliant. Being the positive. The other thing is, I would say is sometimes you have to be honest, and you can't just be. you have to give real feedback to real people, and that's part of the course correction. Course correction. So if you've got the right people, the right things, and you're getting people better at things, and people want to get better at things, you've got to be able to have those honest conversations.
Tough love.
Yeah, and to do that in an empathetic and an honest way, I think is an important skill to learn as a leader. And then we just sort of finished off, didn't we, thinking about the micromanager versus the chaos, that sort of oversight, getting that right. And it's going to be different for each project, and it's going to be different for the group of people that you've got and the size and the scale, but finding something that works for a team where you feel like I'm going to say control. Has anybody ever really got control? But, I've got my finger on the pulse of what's going on. The illusion of control versus carnage.
Yeah. You're stewarding it, aren't you? And I think that's the thing. Most things are course correctable as well, but you can only course correct if you know what's going on.
Yeah.
Like really what's going on, not just the data, to your point. The data's really helpful. Yeah. And then you need to understand what's underneath it.
Well, there you go. If people want to get in touch with you, how can people get in touch with you, Ben?
LinkedIn.
Yeah, okay. So feel free to reach out to you on LinkedIn. So
absolutely.
Final thing for me to say. Thank you once again for coming into the studio, joining me in front of the camera, in front of the lights.
Indeed.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Don't go yet. Remember to subscribe to the podcast and rate the show. It really helps us grow and book new great guests. And remember, if the podcast isn't enough for you and you want weekly microlearning delivered straight to your inbox, sign up to the Tech World Human Skills Weekly. Head over to www.techworldhumanskills.com to sign up.